written as the sum of two cubes in two different ways. And right there, that's the kind of mind we're talking about. Someone who saw these deep, beautiful patterns where the rest of us just see nothing.
So who was this man who seemed to be personal friends with every number? Well, his journey was about as unlikely as one of his own theorems.
Ramanujan's life was just this brief, brilliant flash. He was born into poverty, had very little formal education, and then his complete obsession with math just took over. This timeline here, it shows his rocket-like rise from total obscurity to the very top of the academic world, and then his tragic, way too early death.
Back in India, his genius was this complete paradox. Here's a guy who could solve problems that stumped college professors, but he kept failing his own college exams because he literally ignored every subject that wasn't math. He filled notebooks with groundbreaking theorems, but he couldn't get a degree. He was also deeply spiritual and truly believed that his mathematical ideas were divine revelations, shown to him in his dreams by the goddess Namagiri.
So, with basically zero prospects in India, Ramanujan took a huge gamble. He bundled up some of his most incredible, unproven work and mailed it halfway across the world.
So in 1913, G.H. Hardy, over at Cambridge University, gets this very strange letter from an unknown clerk in Madras. It's packed with pages of these wild, complex formulas, but with no proofs. Hardy's first thought, this has to be a prank. But as he and his colleagues started looking closer, they were just floored. Some of the formulas they kind of recognized, but others were like nothing they had ever seen. As Hardy famously said later, they just had to be true. No one could invent things that incredible.
Hardy knew, right then and there, that he'd found a mind that comes along maybe once in a century. He immediately made arrangements to bring Ramanujan to Cambridge, and that's what kicked off one of the most amazing collaborations in the history of science.
And what's so fascinating is just how different these two were. I mean, look at this. You have Ramanujan, whose math came from this deep well of intuition, from what he felt were visions. And then you have Hardy, a product of the strict European school of thought, who demanded cold, hard proof for absolutely everything. Hardy's job essentially was to build the logical scaffolding for Ramanujan's almost supernatural insights.
But you have to remember, Cambridge was a really harsh new world for him. He was a devout Brahmin, a strict vegetarian, and he had a terrible time trying to find food during the shortages of World War I. He was lonely, isolated, and totally unprepared for the damp, bitter English cold. So while his mind was soaring to new heights, his day-to-day life was a real struggle.
But despite all those hardships, their work together was just unbelievably fruitful. They produced ideas that still fascinate mathematicians to this day. So let's just look at a couple of quick examples that really show off both the playful and the profound side of his genius.
Okay, take a look at this. At first glance, it just seems like a grid of numbers, right? A simple magic square. But this is Ramanujan's magic square, and with him, you always know there's another layer of wonder hiding underneath.
So yeah, like any magic square, if you add up the numbers in any row or any column or the main diagonals, you get the same number, 139. Okay, that's pretty neat, but that's just the warm-up.
Because it goes so much deeper, the four corner numbers, they also add up to 139. The four little squares right in the center? Yep, 139. The patterns are just astonishing. But the real secret, the little personal signature, is hidden in plain sight.
Let's look really closely at that top row. We've got the numbers 22, 12, 18, and 87. What could that possibly mean?
It's his birthday, December 22nd, 1887. Isn't that amazing? He didn't just create a mathematical puzzle, he literally wove his own identity into the numbers. It's this perfect, beautiful mix of logic and art.
Another huge area he worked on was something called partitions. Now, a partition is just the number of ways you can add up whole numbers to get another number. So for example, the number 4, well, it can be broken down in 5 different ways. Seems simple enough when you're working with small numbers, right?
But the complexity just explodes. Using the formula that Hardy and Ramanujan came up with, we now know that the number 100 has over 190 million possible partitions. Before they came along, people thought calculating something like that was basically impossible. They found a hidden order in all that chaos.
Tragically, Ramanujan's time in England took a terrible toll on his health. He eventually returned to India, but his work was far from finished. In fact, some of his most mysterious and profound ideas came to him in his final days.
Even on his deathbed, Ramanujan's mind was just on fire.
He was sending letters back to Hardy, filled with brand new concepts, like his Mach theta functions, which were so bizarre and advanced that Hardy admitted that he and his colleagues just couldn't understand them. It would take mathematicians decades to even begin to figure out what he was seeing.
And this is why his legacy is so immense. More than a century after he died, mathematicians are still digging through his lost notebooks and finding treasure. His formulas, which look like pure mathematical curiosities back in 1920, are now being used to help us understand the physics of black holes, and they're showing up in fields like string theory and even modern cancer research.
His story isn't just about math, it's also this really poignant reminder of human potential. As India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru later said, Ramanujan's life kind of symbolizes all the brilliant minds that are lost simply because they never get a chance.
And that leaves us with this one big, lingering question. Ramanujan was discovered almost by a fluke. So how many more are out there, right now, in every part of the world, holding ideas that could completely reshape our future? If only someone were there to open their letter. Thank you for joining me.